I'd like to start with the way in which these files are being released. Will oversight follow up on these redactions or lack thereof?
Well, I certainly plan to, and I know many of the Democrats on the committee will as well. The reality is, this is over 40 days late, and they are withholding another 2.5 million files at least by their own admission. And they're saying the reason they withheld those files is to protect the victims, yet even what they released did not protect the victims. It seems like what they're doing best is protecting some of the president's friends or some of the perpetrators rather than bringing the transparency and accountability that the American people want. So we're certainly going to continue. There's other avenues where we're going to try to get documents and records and evidence, but certainly this is not over.
Interesting. I know this is, as I mentioned, we've got a Republican majority. Is this something that might have to wait for when Democrats are in charge?
I hope not. There have been Republicans who were cooperative with us, who have voted with us on some of these subpoenas. We've had to drag some of the majority through this, but they have followed at times because we know that this is a bipartisan issue. Even many Republicans feel like there needs to be accountability and transparency when it comes to this. So we hope it doesn't have to wait that long. But it's been a long time. We put out a subpoena in August of last year. They said last March that they had the files ready to release and all redacted. And so I'm not quite sure why they're a day late and a dollar short when it comes to this release.
What about the files that have not been released? DOJ still has several million, according to reports. Will they ever see the light of day?
They will see the light of day. It's just about when. I will say that there are a lot of things we've been looking for, like some of the victims' statements to law enforcement, a lot of the draft indictments that were going to be filed against Jeffrey Epstein that were dropped when he got the sweetheart deal. There's several things that are missing right now that we were looking for. And the reality is, I think there's a reason they're withholding them. It's pretty clear that they're trying to protect some people. And this entire case is not just about the crimes that were committed by Epstein and Maxwell and others. It's also about the cover-up and why when people were able to cover up these crimes and who covered up these crimes and how we prevent that in the future.
You just start wondering if we're going to be talking about this for the rest of our lives, Congressman. You mentioned the cover-up and an attempt to hide, I think, the president's friends. You suggested rephrase that if I'm not doing a good job. What makes you think that that's the case when we've seen a number of Democrats like Bill Clinton in these files as well?
Yeah, I've said from the very beginning, it doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or a Republican. Everyone should face consequences, even if they can't in the court of law because of, statutes of limitation, at least in the court of public opinion. We've seen, members of the monarchy lose their titles. We've seen people lose their board seats. That's the kind of reckoning that should happen to anyone who was involved or engaged in some of these crimes. I think the reality is, though, the president himself, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, has said that, releasing all the files will hurt a lot of his friends, right? And so I'm just using the president's words. And the reality is, if he wanted to be completely transparent about this, he would have released the files last year because he campaigned on this. There's no reason not to unless you're trying to hide something. But in any case, we will find the information. We're also subpoenaing the banks and financial institutions as well. We have, testimony coming up from multiple witnesses who are close with Epstein. So we're going to continue our investigation regardless of what the administration does.
Well, you get points for consistency when it comes to Bill Clinton. You did vote to hold Bill Clinton in civil contempt after being subpoenaed by the Oversight Committee. You said your goal is to hear from the Clintons or anyone else who might have information about Jeffrey Epstein. Congressman, what's this going to lead to?
The Clintons are an interesting case because I don't think they have a lot of information. I think a big reason why they've been targeted is because they're a political enemy of the president. I supported civil contempt just to put pressure on them to come to the table and work with us. But the majority here, probably by Trump's direction, is going after criminal contempt so they can put the Clintons in jail, even though the Clintons have offered to come in and testify for 4 hours. The sticking point, it seems, is the Clintons don't want it to be a marathon, deposition about everything and not just Epstein, about everything that they've ever done in their careers, right? That's what Republicans want to do is drag them through that. And I think that's understandable because this subpoena is specifically about their involvement with Epstein, which is what I want to hear as well. So I don't support criminal contempt, which is going to be voted on by the entire House this week. But I do support at least putting pressure on them to come forward.
That's an important distinction. Congressman, we're on day 3 of a partial government shutdown that takes on a whole different look in the state of Virginia, where we have so many federal employees, defense contractors, members of the military. I'll remind everybody that partial means right now Treasury, Defense, Health, Labor, and the sticking point, Homeland Security, go unfunded for now. I know Rules is going to be meeting in about 2 hours. Is this bill, as you understand it, going to go to the floor tomorrow? Would you vote yes?
Well, it's important to see what Rules does, because the two sticking points for me are the Department of Defense and DHS and Homeland Security.
Yeah.
The reason is because of the way those secretaries in charge of those agencies have operated. Secretary Noma called for her resignation, have called for impeachment, because the reality is she's not running that agency in the way it's supposed to, and they're basically a paramilitary right now. They are going far beyond their mandate, and so to continue to fund them is outrageous. There's no reason to do that unless we see some real changes. And I'm tired of promises. The reality is I've been given assurances over and over again, and then have people go back on those assurances. And so this is our time to put pressure. We're in the minority. We don't have the votes normally, but in this case, I think we need to make a point. And hopefully they will come to the table and we will get through this, because I don't want to shut down either. We have a lot of federal workers and contractors, and I want to make sure that they're protected as well.